Hello and welcome back to MetaMath. In this video, I'm going to be covering problem 24 from the 2020 AMCA test. This video is part of my larger series where I'm going to be covering the last 10 problems from 16 through 25. So if you're interested in seeing the solutions to the rest of the problems on the test, please check out my playlist, which I'll be putting in the description below. With that being said, let's get right into this geometry problem, which reads as following. A large square region is paved with n square gray square tiles, each measuring s inches on a side. A border d inches wide surrounds each tile. The figure below shows the case for n equals 3. When n equals 24, the 576 gray tiles cover 64% of the area of the large square region. What is the ratio d over s for this larger value of n? So right away, we can see that we have a diagram, but it's important to keep in mind that this diagram is for n equals 3. So we can't use it directly to solve for d over s for this larger value of n, which is specifically n equals 24. However, because we're given a smaller value, the first thing we might try to think of is generalizing a pattern to a larger value. So if we find something that we can generalize in n equals 3 to n equals 24, then we would be able to use that to solve the problem. So looking at the information we're given, we know that each of the gray square tiles has side length s, and the border is d. So we can use that to find the side length of this large square region for n equals 3. So the s is for each of the gray square tiles, and we have a white gap between each of these squares and to the outside of them, which is going to have a width of d because it is the border that is mentioned in the problem. So the side length of this large square region is going to be the sum of all those lengths, which is 3s plus 4d. Now, immediately, we see that for n equals 3, we have 3s in our large square region, but we also have 4d. So what we suspect is that when we generalize this to a 24 square, or to n equals 24, we would expect to see that 24 of these squares in a row would give us the 24s in our numerator, or in our side length. However, we also have a bunch of these d's right here that we have to account for, but we need to know how many there are. So in n equals 3, we had 4d, which is suspiciously one more than the case. But we can see that this is actually the pattern for n equals 24 as well, because for each gray square, there's a gap or a border to its left, and for the last square, there's a gap or border to its right. So what we end up having for n equals 24 is that each square will have a border to its left, but the last square on the right will also have a border on its right. So for n equals 24, the side length of the large square would be 24s plus 25d. So now that we have the side length of this large square for n equals 24, we can go ahead and use the last piece of information this problem gives us. The 576 gray square tiles cover 64% of the area. Using this, we can go ahead and set up an equation because we have everything we need to solve this problem now. So 64%, we can write that as 64 over 100 is equal to the ratio of the 576 gray tiles, because there's 576 of them, and each of them have a side length of s. The total area is 576 s squared. The area of the large square region, which we just found the side length of, has an area of 24s plus 25d squared. Now we have to keep in mind that we are solving for d over s, so at some point we have to get s and d on separate sides and divide. Now the first thing we can do is simplify this equation by taking the square root, because everything, including this 64 of 100, is a square. So we can write this as 8 squared over 10 squared, and keeping in mind that 576 is 24 squared, we can take the square root of this entire equation. Doing this would allow us to simplify it to 8 over 10 is equal to square root of 576s squared would be 24s over 24s plus 25d. From here, we can simplify 8 over 10 to be 4 over 5. So now we can go ahead and keep solving. We can go ahead and keep solving for s and d. So now we cross multiply here, and we get that 120s is equal to 96s plus 100d. Now again, we're solving for d over s, so we have to get d and s on separate sides so we can divide. Now what we can do here is get the s on separate sides. So we have 120s minus 96, which is 24s, is equal to 100d. Now this is the part that we wanted to get to, because here we can divide both sides by s to get 24 is equal to 100d over s. D over s is exactly what we're looking for. So now we just divide by 100 to get the d over s on its own. So we get that 24 over 100 is equal to d over s. And simplifying that gives us 6 over 25, because 4 is the greatest common factor of both 24 and 100. So using that, we go back to our answer choices and we see that A, 6 over 25 is indeed the correct answer for this problem. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking the video and subscribing. If you have any other problems or topics that you would like me to cover, leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to make a video on it. Thanks for watching.